women have been on the vibration technology train for decades.
Did he have the legendary wrench that I've heard he has?
What's Dean got to do with it?
It's not really the dick, it's the balls.
Cock talk with Locke. I knew I'd get it in, James.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a ding.
I'm coming in there with a 2-finger cul-de-sac. I'm going to tickle them pink, and they're going to get a dose of Bonzi.
To me, relationships are like a leash, and
Yours didn't go well, right?
No.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Let's start right out. Hey, what happened?
There you go. Welcome. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. Welcome back. This is day 2 of 3. We don't do Mondays and Fridays just because we don't want to. Anyway, welcome to the program. My name is Dean. Lots going on today, as always. We've got a full slate of people that we like to talk to, and today's going to be another different conversation than it was yesterday with Randy Hillier. We've got Lachlan Cross from 95.7 Cruise FM at Edmonton here today.
I'm here.
Also, Mr. Darren Pfeiffer from the rock and roll band Goldfinger, and of course, the Dangerous Darren podcast, anywhere you get your fine podcasts, iTunes, Adobe, and of course, DeanBlundell.com. And the host of 2 podcasts, including the Regal Beagle podcast, which I cannot wait to talk about. Because I listened to it today and I'm like, fuck, I forgot how much I loved Three's Company. Please welcome Hard Rock God. Sorry I called you that. You probably won't want to. But anyway, please welcome podcaster, content provider, musician, member of the band, and namesake, Danko Jones, ladies and gentlemen. Danko Jones is
Yes!
here.
Hi, guys.
Dude,
It's great to be here.
Lachlan loves you. We all love you, but Lachlan...
I love Lachlan.
Like, super loves you. He's been talking about trying to get you on the podcast for a long, long time. I just want to know about the history of the relationship there. How long have you known him? Because he says you guys are, like, super, super close.
I did not say that.
Since 04 or 05, maybe?
No, longer. I saw a show you did in Prince George, Danko, in a small blues club. And you came
That
out
was
in a big
99.
fucking hat. Yeah, it was crazy. And
That was 99?
Yeah.
Or 2000 with Tricky Woo, I believe.
Tricky Woo, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I started interviewing Danko on my radio show when I went to Winnipeg. And then that carried on to the Bear. And yeah, it's the rest is history. Yeah.
Is it like a mutual friendship, or is it one-sided? Is it just all coming from Lachlan?
Pretty strong from this end. I have a bit of a crush on the bass player, JC, the coolest bass player in Canada, in my opinion, in rock and roll, possibly. I mean, he's got to be one of the guys that you put up there. But yes, no, yeah, I've given up on my stalking.
Yeah, it's Lachlan. It's probably like this. Bling. Oh, it's Lachlan. Delete. Delete.
Is that how it goes? Is that how it goes, Danko? Is that how it goes? You see the DMs and you're like, I don't know. Everybody gets them, right? I just want to know if he's in that group. Is he in that group of people where you're like, I need to think about what I'm going to say to this guy because he won't leave me alone?
To Lachlan? No,
Yeah.
absolutely not. No,
Okay.
I mean, whenever I get a message from Lachlan, I think I reply fairly
Fairly quickly, yes. There is that 500 feet, whatever, but
That was my next thing, Locke. I was going to say, when Danko sends I reply, it's more like forwards to the police.
I don't
Leave me alone. What do I do?
It's interesting though, because Danko,
don't
you
laugh, Darren. You're next.
you and Darren also, like, I feel like the odd man out here because you and Darren also have a pretty decent history, and you're working on something right now, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Can we? Are we allowed to talk about it, Darren?
Of course,
I don't
yeah,
even...
yeah. It's coming out soon. As soon as we get everything together, we're doing a Mikey and his Uke. It's a musician out of Toronto. This guy Mikey Hodden from a band called the Fairmounts. He's been doing quarantine videos since it started, every day since it started. But then it's moved from every day, which was too taxing on him, to once every couple of weeks. And he's getting great artists from any number of punk rock or hard rock bands to do these very eclectic songs with all different people coming in. And the next one we're trying to work out is do a Dead Kennedys version of Police Truck. And I believe Danko is singing it.
Yeah, I sang the vocals. We were talking before we went on the air about I have to do the video part of it. But and I love Police Truck. It's one of my favorite DK songs, so it was easy to do. And I believe East Bay Ray himself is playing guitar on this track, right?
No, I just got word from him today that he broke his thumb and he can't play guitar for 8 weeks.
So who is it? Is it gonna be Melvin?
Eric Melvin, yeah.
From NoFX, right?
Yeah.
Eric Melvin from NoFX. Sorry, I called him Melvin, but
no, everyone calls him Melvin.
Yeah, but that's great as well. I mean, I really dig Eric, and I love the song, and it's going to be fun.
Yeah, it's something we've been doing to keep us as musicians, because we can't play shows in clubs or venues of any kind. It keeps us sane. So when these things come down the pipe, I'm all for it. Like, I get to record, I get to mix my drums, make it sound perfect, and then watch it kind of get built brick by brick until it's finally released. And then seeing people enjoy it is similar to, playing a show and seeing people enjoy the show. It's not quite the same, but it's in the same ballpark.
Yeah. I mean, I've done a few myself. I've done about 5 of them. And again, it's always with like either friends who are in other bands, and there's always one person who's like in a huge band. So it's always fun.
Yeah, Mickey D. You did one with Mickey, the drummer of Motorhead?
Yeah, I did one with Mickey D and Dave from Sum 41 and Gene from Turbo, Hank Von Hell's band. So we did Iron Fist.
Yes, very, very cool.
Yeah.
Is that... Sorry, no, I was just going to say, I've seen some of those. Like, I know, Darren, you did one a while back with Robin Black, something like that. I don't know if it was the same kind of thing, if it was the exact same thing, I'm not sure, where everybody's like putting their shit together. But, it's interesting because I just watched your video today for I Want Out, Danko, right? And the video's kind of cool because it's reflective of sort of, everybody in this space that we've had to kind of occupy for the past, like, I don't know how long, it's been a year. And it had like, it was the first video, and I don't watch a lot of videos. Much music doesn't exist anymore, so I don't watch a lot of videos. But it was the first video I've seen that during the pandemic, and I'm sure you must have recorded it during the pandemic, right? Or maybe did it take on different meaning because, you had people in their apartments trying to busy themselves, trying to make themselves, do something, try something, get out of their own heads. And I thought it was, I thought it was really, really cool the way that the video and the words spoke to actually the images that you had in the video. And there's part of the chorus that I thought was interesting. 2 parts of that song I thought were great. I wanted the chorus, obviously. I want to leave. I want out. I'm confused. I have no doubt. Not confused. I have no doubt. And at the start of the video, I loved the little, is it called a chyron? I think it's called a chyron. The little text that you had at the start of the video where it said, restrictions are necessary. Being trapped is a choice. I thought that was profound.
I thought it was too. That was all the director, Patrick Uleas. He did our last video before the pandemic. And so all credit to him with the video. He basically told us what he wanted to do, and we were all cool with it. And I think what he wrote in his proposal, he actually did. So it was actually turned out really great. And I don't know if you remember the video. In the video, there's a guy who's in different costumes and he's running around, and that's our he's been our roadie before, but he's like a roadie for many bands. A lot in the music biz, a lot of people know him. I don't know, Darren, if you've ever run into Biffin, but he's kind of the star of the video as well. So I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah, the dude that looks like Lachlan, only a little shorter and a little wider.
I guess he's got a beard. Yeah,
yeah.
Beard
it's
and
a
bad
great
teeth.
No, it's just the same beard. It's a little grayer. But you featured a bunch of different people in the video, and I thought it was interesting because that sentiment of people like, I got to get out, I want to get out, I want to go and do something. But it was more than just getting out of your house. It was getting out of that mindset that we've kind of all farmed over the past year, was it not?
Yeah, I mean, the lyrics for that song I wrote in July, staring out of the window of this room that I'm in, just wanting to be out and not being able to. So it is absolutely 100% about the pandemic. And then we recorded it in September, October, when in Ontario, the guidelines allowed us to have, there was 5 of us in the studio, and we were allowed to be indoors with 5 people, and we kept our distance, and we all had masks on. And when one person had done their part, that was it. And yeah, so we did it. We were lucky enough that I think the new cases were like under 200 a day or under 100 a day around that time. So
sounds like a long time ago.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Danko, at any point in the last year, have you, I don't know if on the edge is right, have you been like, I'm gonna go fucking crazy kind of point at any time? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I think everyone has. I'm not going to hide it, because I think it actually would make people who are listening feel better about what some of their thoughts. I at the beginning of the pandemic was insane for me. I was basically cleaning the floors of my place 2-3 times a day, and I didn't know where to put my shoes, because the shoes because I got to walk my dog, so I have to go out, got to get food. But then when I come home, I didn't know how to. Just small things like that were giving me high anxieties, things you take for granted. And over the first few weeks, I eventually figured out how to work around it. But yeah, I was like, I have another friend of mine, and she's like super high anxiety too. So between the two of us, she was giving me tips.
Tips on how to beat anxiety.
You haven't stopped for 25 fucking years, have you? You've gone. You started, and that was it. You and JC have just been going fucking balls to the wall.
Yeah, and I've heard people in bands, and Darren might think this way too. It's like, oh, I just want to get out there. But we have been going straight for 25 years. When I finally got a break, it was with all this anxiety, I couldn't even enjoy it. But it is actually relieving to be home, although not for the circumstances, but yeah, it's nice to be home. I haven't been home this long in like over 20 years. So
is that when you talked about it was funny because I was reading about you this morning, and I read that when you first started, as a band, you didn't really want to put out an album. You just thought you'd tour. And then, you got 9-10 albums now. You put out a double album. And the hallmark of Danko Jones, if you've ever been to a show, and I have, or if you know anything about the band, it's that touring is it, right? Like, and so from touring to not touring, and not just not touring because you don't have a record, not just not touring because you just finished a tour, like you literally can't go, right?
Yeah.
That's not just okay, guys, just hang on, take a break. That's like whoa. I've been doing this for 25 years. The entire path I've cut through the forest of life has been interrupted. What the fuck do I do now?
Yeah, that's pretty much all my thoughts at the top of the pandemic. And it's one thing to, like you're saying, to consciously go, I'm taking a break. It's another thing to have it taken out under you. So I don't know if anybody remembers, but at the beginning there was everybody was doing songs on their guitars, like musicians and people in bands were doing songs on their guitars, and I thought that infuriated me.
Why?
Well, because I just didn't want it to be the new norm, and I hate that term, and I hate all this stuff. But now, I didn't want to do any interviews with I would have said no to this a year ago. I just didn't want to talk about it. So it's taken a year, and also the vaccine rollout is like and family members that are in the vulnerable categories have gotten it or are getting it. So anxiety levels are coming down. So now I feel, I can talk about it a little more freely than before. But yeah, it's, there's that thing in Barcelona. I'm sure everyone heard about the 5,000 experiment show. And as crazy as that sounds, it is, for me, it's like, oh, wow, there is a bit of a light. People are starting to come around to doing it. And the footage from New Zealand and from what I'm hearing of Australia, things are coming around. So hopefully this time next year, we'll be on tour. And I swear to God, I've been joking around in the circle of our group and our, all our techs and our crew and everything. I just go, I can't wait to go. Everyone's like, oh, I can't wait to go out on tour. And I go, I can't wait to go out on tour so I can complain about wanting to go home again. Because that's all I do on the road. That's all I do.
Does after a month or two, you get this anxiety of like, okay, I miss my dog. I miss my bed. I miss my cappuccino maker. I miss my refrigerator. I miss my TV, my remote, my shower. Because you've showered in some just gross, disgusting showers, as have I. Or not at all. Just get into the van or the bus and go to the next town disgusting.
Yeah.
And feel disgusting falling asleep. And then you miss home. But when you're home like you are now, and I've felt a level of anxiety too. I don't know if it's on par with you, but I felt a level of, this is crazy. Like everyone's life has been disrupted, no matter what your profession is. But for musicians, it's a weird feeling. I got 3 shows coming up next week, and then I got a month here, and then I got a week there. It's what we really kind of live for at this point in our lives. And to say stop and then a whole year and a half with no shows, it's really fucked. It's really, really, really fucked. Where other people can just kind of work remotely.
Yeah.
Or now that we're slowly coming out of the pandemic, start to talk about going back to their offices.
Well, I have a similar thing with me, although I don't tour. When I come home, my wife wants me to fucking leave. So it's not exactly the same thing, but similar.
But you know what? It's funny because Danko brings up a good point, and so does Darren, right? Like we don't do what they do for a living. We're not touring musicians. No. We go into a studio or we work from home or wherever the situation is. But generally speaking, we're not too far from where we set up camp, right? But having said that, the dichotomy between, what you said earlier about, fuck, I cannot wait to get back on the road. And then when you get out, you're complaining. That's just such a sign of where we are as people, right? As a grateful people or people who thought we should be grateful for things, there's this thing that wants us to get to this goal. And when we get to that goal, we're like, okay, what's the next thing? Or we'll revert back to, oh, it was so much nicer over there. Why can't I go back there? And then you go back there and you're like, fuck, I can't wait to go back over there where I complained about everything that I had and all parts of my life. And then you get put in a different situation and you realize, maybe it wasn't that bad. It's like we're eternally shitting on the things that are in front of us without living in the reality of them or preventing ourselves from living in the reality of them.
I love the honesty, though. Brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I can't wait for the first week and a half of when we go back to touring. I'm really going to enjoy the week and a half, that first week and a half. And then by the end of the second week, I'm going to start complaining again. But that first week and a half, I'm really going to enjoy every minute of it. It's going to be the best.
Oh, dude.
But yeah, I'm going to start complaining again.
Yeah. But we all do the same thing. It's the human condition, right? Like it's also the thing that makes us want to go and do something else. And I often get caught because the thing that I really wanted to work on, because I'm like everybody else. I spent the first half of the pandemic going, this fucking sucks. Everything, I can't do anything good. Can't go to the store. Can't go to the bar. Can't do anything. I have to wear a mask in the store. Like it was a focus on all the terrible things that I had to do as opposed to what I still had, right? But in those moments when we're put out or we're down or we're anxious, as someone that suffers from anxiety and has for a long time and talks about it, it's really difficult to go, what I'm really looking forward to tonight, because you have to manufacture gratefulness sometimes when you're really down. I'm really looking forward to staying home again tonight and watching a different television show, or maybe something there's something on Netflix that I haven't seen. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I've made watching shows on Netflix, like TV shows. That's the one thing that the whole day centers around. I can't wait till I get to watch the next Better Call Saul episode today. And you turn that into the best part of the day.
Yeah.
You have to.
Danko,
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting that you, you could have gone any sort of direction with around the pandemic. And you grabbed a lane, and you've been very vocal about what people should and shouldn't do. But I think there's also a part of you that's a bit critical of how it's been handled. How are you right now with how the authorities, the public officials are handling the pandemic?
I actually took down a tweet this morning in regards to it was an old tweet from yesterday because I felt it was very critical of the rollout. Exactly what you're addressing in Ontario. People are complaining that there's vaccines in freezers that aren't being used. And someone made a good point to me saying that those, although it looks like the optics are, there's vaccines in freezers, but those are the second doses for the people who got the first ones. And when I realized that, I go, you know what? I'm out of my element here. I have no idea. I'm not the one handling this thing. And family members are getting vaccinated. There's 5 family members in Toronto for me that got vaccinated, and they're 60
That's
and
awesome.
over. Yeah.
Awesome.
And so I'm like, you know what? Okay. And I had to take my parents to the clinic to get their vaccines. And it wasn't the easiest organized thing to do, but it was there. And like you were saying, Dean, like you put things in perspective, and wow, we didn't know this, 12 months ago that it would be even like this. I was thinking like 24 months,
Mm-hmm.
and so at least, and so yeah, I took it down. I was being a little overly critical, and but you're right. I did pick a lane, and the lane that I've picked was common sense, which is wear a mask, not because I'm an expert and I know everything, is because that's what the experts are saying. Like I'm just saying what, regurgitating what experts who went to school for like 8 to 12 years in this field of epidemiology have said to us. Yeah. So that's all I'm doing. I'm not, and that's another thing is like, someone said, oh, you're controversial. Controversial? What? Like wear a mask, keep your parents and grandparents alive, and try to like, try not to be a racist prick.
That's very controversial, Danko.
Yeah,
try not to be a racist prick.
How am I being controversial?
Yeah, I'm telling you, you're a trailblazer.
Yeah. It's just, I'm like, what am I saying? That's so out of this. So that's the thing is that's another thing about this pandemic, which I've realized is like my father, growing up, he always used to say, most people are stupid. And although that's a
vague generalization, but he's not wrong.
Right. I always used to take that with a grain of salt and go, well, I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. But in this pandemic, it's been kind of like the black light on people's, stupidity. And I'm watching it going, maybe he was right. Like the people not wearing a mask.
You call him and let him know? God, I got to tell you something.
You remember
when I was 12? You told me everyone was stupid. Fuck, you were bang on, man.
Hey, Danko, have you ever heard of a punk rock band called Ludacris?
Oh, I love Ludacris. They turned into Scatterbrain, right?
Scatterbrain, correct, exactly. They have a song. One of their big hits was "Most People Are Dicks."
Yeah, yes, I know. I love that band. Tommy Christ.
Yes, yeah. Most people.
What happened to that band? What happened to them?
True. That's the chorus. Most people are dicks. It's sad but true.
Yeah.
And you're right. You're absolutely spot on. Right. This has been a black light for people that A, are unintelligent, B, unintelligent and just lack common sense, or some sort of weird hybrid combination of the both. And these people some of them stay low and keep their mouth shut because they have a shred of intelligence. Others are like, no, I'm not wearing a mask. Fuck the system and fuck the virus. It's fake. And this. Other people storm the Capitol and kill cops. These people are everywhere, not just in Canada, the United States. They're in Europe. They're all over the world. So I think Tommy Christ and Ludacris got it, and your dad got it right. Most people are dicks.
Yeah, I think, and you know what? That's an easy way to explain it, right? Without the ability to critically think. And I've been looking for an explanation of why people are assholes or willingly ignorant and don't seem to care. And I listened to a great podcast the other day that shines some light on it called The Daily Stoic with Ryan Holiday. I don't know if you're familiar with his books and his writings about Stoicism and philosophy and Buddhism and stuff like that, but I was listening to the podcast, and they talked about how it's really more of a psychological thing than anything else right now. Right? Is that the way that we work according to the rewards that we've been culturally taught to look for. Right? And we get instant gratification when we put out a tweet saying, "Fuck that guy, don't wear a mask," or "Fuck that guy, wear a mask." And what it's done is it's created this tribalism of stupid people on both sides, right?
Yeah.
It really has. And so because of that tribalism, nobody's willing to go, hey, why does Danko think everybody should wear a mask? And then ask you the question. They just go, you're a part of the problem, you racist dick. And you're like, what the fuck is happening here? Because no one really cares about the merits of what someone's trying to say. They care about making sure they get that quick hit of reward or that quick hit of justification. And the other part is that when they're faced with failure, or, you and I bring up a fact about, how the B117 variant is now a big issue, or the fact that there are, I think it was last count, 800 people in ICU in Ontario, which is like double the count it was during the second wave. They doubled down on the lies because they're trapped, right? On both sides, And what happens is that it ends up really alien. I've felt this for the past few months because I've been on the left. I've been on the wear the mask, let's just relax. But then there's that virtue signaling portion of when you do talk about those things that you're like, I don't want to be in that group of those people either.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to come off like a big preacher thing, but why I tweet what I tweet is, I mean, it just comes from the frustration of, I'm a direct result of, this whole pandemic, being at home and everything. And it's frustration for me. I'm not trying to get any likes. I'm just trying to get out of here, and tour.
And you give a shit about your parents and the people in your lives that are elderly, right? Yeah. That's
I gotta
okay,
say,
man.
I gotta say, every time someone posts a picture of either their parents or them getting a shot, it's I really do. I'm not trying to bullshit. I really feel great. It puts me in a good mood because it really is one step closer to getting over this. Like, I posted a thing where I put 9 pictures of people in bands, friends in bands, and I said, hey, this is great. I love watching people in bands get vaccinated because we're one step closer. And of course, I had to get one guy going, look at the left. They just want to show and tell. And no, man. Yeah. It's like, if there's someone who's hesitant, maybe, seeing a picture of someone in a band or, I don't know, anyone get vaccinated will help them get vaccinated.
Don't downplay that. I think it's important. We were joking on the air because there was a conversation about the possibility that broadcasters might be in the second wave, right? I came home and told my wife, I said, we might be in the second wave. And she went, if you fucking idiots get vaccinated because you're broadcasters, that's ridiculous. And I'm like, it's important.
Yeah.
Honey, it's important that they see that this jackass is willing to do it. Right.
Right. Isn't it one of those things? You want to show people what you believe and you don't want, and so that's the thing, right? Like
that's part of it.
Yeah, but you put out a picture of something that you're doing for the betterment of yourself, and you want to show other people that it's safe. And what's crazy, Danko, is that people who don't believe in this pandemic, people that don't share those views, which is, it's my way of saying those people. They take it personally, right? They take it like it's like an affront. Like,
Yeah.
Are you not reading my tweets? You shouldn't be getting this. And so they get mad at you and call you names. It's amazing to me. It's like this chain reaction of stupidity. But at the same time,
I think both sides are to blame, though. There is that.
Oh, for sure, because you've got the
both.
extremes on both sides beating the shit out of each other, calling each other stupid.
Yeah, I mean, there's some things the left are doing. It's funny how a lot of the heavy duty right has taken sort of a cue from the heavy, the strong left, and now they're doing a lot of the same kind of tactics online, right? Everyone's at fault. I think it's unfortunate. And when you're stuck in the middle, we saw this yesterday when we had Randy Hillier on, right? It's just, I think James said it best. Wow. That was fucking exhausting. It's so hard to be in the middle and try to, have a conversation with somebody if you're in the public eye, like we are, and Danko, you are as well, because you're trying to negotiate that conversation with some level of respect. And then quite often you overthink stuff, and then you take down a tweet that you put out yesterday. Right.
And then you get afraid to share things, and you get anxious before you're putting out a fucking picture of something that, a year ago would have been innocuous.
So I'm catching up here. You had Randy Hillier on yesterday?
It was awesome.
Yeah. Did you miss it?
Well, I probably missed it because Randy's already blocked me on Twitter.
You're not alone.
Really? For what? What'd you say to him?
I told him to basically wear a mask, and I included a picture of that. It's a wonderful meme, and it's a Simpsons character online, and it says YouTube researcher, and he looks and he goes, "I'm a researcher, RESURCHERY," and so I told him, don't be a YouTube researcher, and he blocked me.
Yeah. So. Well, that's offensive, don't you know? When you challenge his authority. We had him yesterday, and I wanted to have him on because I needed to understand that part of it, right? For me, it's the movement of this isn't happening, when clearly it's happening and people are dying and we're seeing the deaths and we're seeing the carnage and no one's touring, and they seem to think that it's all a conspiracy, like a worldwide conspiracy. I needed to know where that came from. I needed to kind of understand it, because going back to what you're saying, I didn't want to be one of those guys anymore that just completely discredits him. Plus, it's kind of fun to like delve into the mind of weirdness for me. I take no offense to anything he says. I said this to him yesterday on the show. I find what you say offensive and dangerous, but I also, on the same token, I also agreed with, the rollout has been ineffective. The government doesn't really give us all the information. So there are parts of which both sides do agree, right? But now we're at this point where no one is allowing people to talk, right? So we're not going to learn about the right side of this equation and why they are acting the way they act and why they don't believe in science. That's what I wanted to know. Like, how the fuck can you not just believe in science, right? And what it comes down to for him, and I think what it came down to and still does for a lot of people that are, super alt-right, is their religious upbringing. Yeah. And I happen to absolutely fucking hate organized religion. So their religious upbringing, you like Satanism, and I want to get into that. Their religious upbringing precludes them from believing in facts because their eternal life counts on it, right? And we kind of gathered that much from him. I asked him about it, and he kind of tried to dodge the question. And then he's like, yeah, for sure, it plays a part in how I believe. And everybody else is the same, but nobody's talking about it. Instead, they just rather tell people to eat shit, right?
He dodged the question on the religious side of things because I think he's well aware of the hypocrisy that sort of presents itself when you're on that side of the fence, right? Anyway.
Well, then I'm glad to be on the day after Randy Hillier, because it balances things out.
We didn't think of it that way. Yeah, no. But Randy, to Randy's credit, and I will say this, Randy, I don't think benefits from the soundbite world that we live in right now, because when he puts something out there, it sounds fucking crazy. But give him 30, 40, 50, 60 minutes in an environment like this, and you can go, all right,
There's something
I'm
there.
not necessarily agreeing with you, but hey, I get where the jumping off point might be, right? So that it was a very interesting conversation. If you get a chance, you should watch it. It might make you really, really angry, Danko, but
Yeah, it will.
You know, I don't want to trigger
okay.
you, dude. We've all had a tough year. I don't want to trigger
But-
anybody.
I do also remember why he might have blocked me, though, as well. Because I went online and I found every picture where he's wearing suspenders, and I go, does Randy Hillier ever not wear suspenders? So maybe that as well. So
It's nice to know old guys are vain too, isn't it? Yeah.
yeah.
Speaking of Twitter and being blocked, I noticed this tweet from you today, and I wanted to ask you about it. You posted this thing from Feral House about someone going through Anton LaVey's Book of Satan, and you wrote, "This was my first Feral House book I bought back in high school, so I imagine how incredible it was when my first book, I've Got Something to Say, was put out by Feral House. It all started with an interest in the Satanism, and not a lot of people, and I'll give you credit, not a lot of people will go, hey guys, this reminds me of a great moment in my life where I was introduced to Satanism."
Well, yes. I mean, first of all, it was a mistake on my part. I wasn't supposed to be the Satanism, but originally I wrote the Satanic Church. But I ran out of words.
More graphic.
had to tighten up.
Had to tighten it up. So
You don't want to be
Satanism-
that double tweet guy, right?
Yeah. But it's true. That was my first Feral House book, and I always had a fascination with Anton LaVey, and I read I'm like a lot of kids, who are into heavy metal and Ozzy Osbourne. I read the Satanic Bible, and I brought it to school because I was gonna be dark and evil, and people are gonna be scared of me. But really, I ended up reading it, going, "Wow, this makes total sense." It wasn't this crazy book that I thought it was. And Feral House just put that out this morning, and I guess it's because of Little Nas X and the Satanic Shoes and all that stuff. But yeah, it's true. I read his biography, and I've since bought a whole bunch of Feral House books over the years. They always put out outsider kind of occult or underground type books, and then to get on the actual imprint was like a band getting on their favorite record label. So that was a big deal for me, and that happened in 2017, and my book came out in 2018.
Yeah, because you just put this was your last book, right, that you put out with Feral House, which is I've Got Something to Say by Danko Jones, 10 Years of Rock and Roll Ramblings, forward by Duff McKagan.
Yeah.
Guns N' Roses fame. Is that kind of the new you? I mean, I know you've been writing, and I know you actually write columns-ish, or I know you write about things, and I wanted to ask you about this because you've gone, listen, we're all old dogs here, right? We're over 40. I'm assuming you're over 40.
I'm 37-ish.
37-ish. So
No, I'm just joking. No,
Okay.
No,
Okay.
I'm just joking.
I almost felt like shit for a second about
How
myself.
old's your neck, Danko?
Yeah, my neck is 55.
Okay. But we're all old dogs, and I understand radio to be radio, TV to be TV, print to be print, musicians to be musicians. They do music. They don't cross over into anything. But, either out of necessity or feeling, a lot of people like yourself, content creators, have turned into content creators, right? It's not just about being a musician or, a spoken word artist or anything. The access that you have to be able to be anything you want now is kind of magical, right? Like a confusing time for a lot of people where they're like, where do I put my brand next? Or what can I do? You've kind of proven that you can sort of do anything you want because you're not only doing books and still doing music. You've got your Danko Jones podcast, or is it called the D&D podcast now? I'm not too sure. Which I listened to this morning, and then I listened to your other podcast, which I didn't know you've been doing this for a long time. It's a Three's Company podcast called The Regal Beagle. And I'm laughing because I'm like, when I first heard that you had it, because we were sharing DMs, I thought, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And then I listened to the last two podcasts you did where you talked about Mr. Furley versus Mr. Roper, and you talked about doing a synopsis for each show and how you get into it. And you had Dave Hill, the comedian, on with you. I loved it. I loved it.
Thank you.
Absolutely fucking loved it. But it brought about the question, like, is that sort of what you want now? Do you kind of want to do as much as you can, or has this been a pandemic thing? You've been doing it for a while, but you've had a chance to kind of put your fingers in a whole bunch of pies.
Well, I mean, thanks a lot for that. That's very nice. But no, I have no. Really, I started writing because I really hated the reviews. They were chock full of mistakes, and for not just our band, for a lot of bands. And there's you start in a band and you look up to these reviewers, and then you realize you're, like you mentioned, old dogs. Now you're the one who knows more than the people reviewing you. And so I thought it was about time I, jumped into the ring and started writing. Plus, it helps on tour. It takes up my days off in the hotel. I don't go out writing or not writing. I just stay in the room. So this kills the day for me. And especially on show days, it kills the hours to showtime if I have a deadline to meet with an editor. So that's why I was writing. Not really for a book, just because it was fun to do and to spill my opinions on music. God knows the guys in my band already know I have too many opinions about bands in music. So this way I get it out and nobody has to hear about it while we're on tour. And then when it comes to podcasting, that was another thing. I honestly, I started it 10 years ago when there was
you were early. You were one of the first cats to do one, and it was unheard of to hear of a guy in a band like yours to go, I'm going to step out and do a podcast.
Oh, you might have been one of the first ones in Canada. I think it was you and fucking Tom Green. I mean, there couldn't have been too many people behind you, Danko. What was the magic? What was that show that I ran on Power?
The Magical World of Rock.
Dude, that was kind of a podcast, right? I mean,
kind of, yeah.
In essence.
Yeah, it definitely was a precursor to what I eventually started to just call my podcast. Although now it's kind of a slick thing. Dean, the last thing I uploaded that you mentioned, D&D, that's just a sub podcast with me and two friends, Nick Flanagan and Damien Abraham from Fucked Up, just talking, because during the pandemic we've just always kept in touch, lead singers sticking together. But really, my podcast has now become this thing where I talk to mostly people in bands, and I do an intro, 5 to 7 minute intro on them, and then we chat. It's not as slick as this, man. Just even working up to the 30-second countdown was impressive, but I don't have anything like this.
Just so you know, it's not as impressive as it looks, but thank you.
It was amazing. You had Herb Tarlick kicking you off and everything.
Johnny Fever.
Johnny Fever.
Venus Flytrap, Andy.
I'm a Bailey Quarters man myself, but
I was too, yeah.
Yeah. So it's the writing and the podcasting, also podcasting for days off on tour. So all of it is really meant for killing time on tour, because you see younger bands when you're on tour with them, and it's their first or second tour, and they haven't been to these cities, and they're going to this place and they're checking this out, and you haven't left your room, and it's because it's the 17th time you've been through the city, and you don't need to see the church in town, like the big huge church that everyone goes to. So when you tour that long, eventually things start to come to a standstill, and you're not as wide-eyed as you once were. The only thing that pretty much motivates me to keep touring is the show. Every show that we do, I still get that feeling an hour till showtime that I really want to kill. And until that feeling goes away, I'm still going to tour. And so truly, when I hit the stage every night that we play, I really want to be there. So that's not changed. But what's changed is the 22 and a half hours to get to that moment, which is basically trying to kill time. So the podcast, the writing, all came out of trying to figure out how to kill time.
That's interesting because we've had this whole year of time. Do you think you've been more productive during the pandemic or less?
Yeah, less, way less.
Isn't that fucked? We've all been the
crazy.
Same way. We were like, oh, I got a whole year. I can do whatever I want, right? I can just work 17 hours a day. And I've had days like that. But then you're like, fuck, at the end, like we're closing in on the end of it. And I'm like, I wasn't pandemic productive.
No, I'm thinking that exact thought you're thinking. When this is over and I run down the list of stuff that I accomplished, it's going to be smaller than I would have if it was a regular year and I had a year off to myself. I mean, for me, I don't know about you guys, but like going out and trying to get, I don't know if paper towels are needed here, and going to the store and getting that. When I come back, the anxiety and all that is so exhausting. I have to I need another 2 hours to chill.
Lay down.
Man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that the other day. I thought, am I just getting old? Or do I hate everything outside my front door more than usual, right? Because you come back from like a grocery store trip. Here's a great example. The other day, I was like grocery store trip and I had like 2 more stops to make. And after I left the grocery store, I'm like, fuck the other 2 stops. And I was out of the house for collectively 45 minutes. And that was enough.
Yeah.
Right?
I hear you, man. Yeah. I hear you. I go to the grocery store at 7 a.m.
Yeah. 8 a.m. here because it opens at 8.
Yeah,
because no one else is in there. Does that mean we're weird though? Like, because I vacillate between like
those are
am I antisocial? Do I need help with that? Is that just pandemic me? You know what I mean? I ask myself these questions all the time, or like because you shouldn't necessarily be exhausted when you go to the grocery store and come back.
Well, I am, and I'm telling you
Me
that,
too.
so you don't feel alone. I mean, if we're weird, we're protecting ourselves. I don't care if you think I'm weird. I'm out of there by 7:30.
Mm-hmm. But isn't that a natural progression of questioning yourself in those moments? Because we've been taught to think that kind of behavior is weird. Because I've had to remind myself when I got home, it's okay to not be enjoying what's going on out there right now. Like it's okay. We don't have to be these robots that toughen up. You got to be tougher than that. You should be able to do a whole bunch after you come from the grocery store and you're like, oh fuck, I almost touched someone.
Yeah. Are you kidding me? That ruins my day. If someone walks behind me, I'm done. My whole mood is ruined. If they walked from behind me, they didn't let me know they were coming. Yesterday was an amazing day at the grocery store. I got there at 7 a.m. and I was the only person in the entire store. Last week, same time, same day, there was 5 people in the store. And it's a huge grocery store. Pissed me off. Pissed me off. I walked in. The first place you go is the fruits and vegetables area, and then I look behind. There's 5 people behind me coming in. I was like, oh my god, I should get out of here.
Hands start to sweat.
Yeah, Danko, you got to work on that between now and the time Danko Jones, the band, goes back on tour. Because when you're finished with your show and you're from the safety and sanctity of the stage and you want to go to the merch booth, forget it. You're going to be a mess.
Oh, I don't go to the merch booth.
Oh, you don't do that?
No.
Oh, okay, then fuck it. Oh, what about meet and greets? What about meet and greets at festivals?
I think we all know people that also did like remarkable things during the pandemic. You saw a picture of them 8 months in, and they've lost 60 pounds, and they're fucking jacked. Yeah. And then I look at that and I go, wow, I'm drinking 2 48 packs a month now instead of 1. I wonder if there's a picture I can post that'll tell that story. Oh yeah, my empties.
Well, but the thing is, before the pandemic, I have to say this. Before the when the pandemic came and everybody was looking for masks like R95s and N95 masks, I had them because I never go on tour. I never board a plane without 2 or 3 N95 or R95 masks because Murphy's Law, I'm the guy who sits beside the person who has a cough or a cold. And since I sing, if we're flying to the first show of a month tour, I'm going to land. And before the first gig starts, I already have their cough and their cold. I'm screwed. So I started to bring masks a few years back, and I'd wear it, and everybody would stare at me in the airplane. They would think that I've got some crazy disease, and like, so when it came, I had 95s. I was ready. So yeah, it doesn't matter if you think you're weird or they think you're weird. Like, in the end, you're going to be protected. That's how I see it.
I think the mask thing is going to stick. I
For a long
honestly do.
time, I do agree.
Has anybody been sick? I haven't even had. Well, my co-host gave me diarrhea a couple of times from his
Are you
food.
counting mental sickness? Because I got a lot of that going on.
Yeah, we know.
I haven't even had a fucking cold. Nothing in a year. Boom.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, it's
Right.
weird.
You're tempting fate now. You're tempting fate because
Were
now
you like that?
you're going to wake up with the sniffles.
Danko, were you like that before? How long before the pandemic were you masking up? Because I get
few
that
years.
whole weirdness. Like, I live in an area where masks are prevalent, and I'm not going to say where, because then people will say you're racist. So I live in an area where a lot of people wear masks, and they've been doing it for years, right? And then everybody thought they were weird. Now the world is caught up to that thinking that you've been talking about, where you said, I don't care if anybody thinks I'm weird. I'm protecting myself because this is my job, right? Like, it makes a world of sense. Got to feel pretty good that everybody caught up with you in some, like, I mean, the pandemic's terrible, but like, not being the only guy wearing a mask at the airport for now is kind of feel pretty good. It's like a silver lining thing.
Yeah, well, what I was doing before the pandemic, it just makes me double down during the pandemic. So if I think that to be safer at 7 a.m. at the grocery store is the way to go, I'm not going to question it. And yeah, the only thing is they haven't even opened the till at around when I'm done at like 7:15. I got to walk around the store to find a cashier. In that time, someone could be like standing behind me. This is the anxiety that I go through, the inner dialogue.
Yeah, Danko, I got a solution. Wear a heavy trench coat and just steal everything.
Yeah.
Just shove everything in there and walk out.
You
walk out with your credit card in your hand like this. Like, so when they stop you, you go, I'm ready to pay.
Yeah. Or don't do that.
Do you guys remember that video of the guy that was flipping out? It was an Alberta video. Maybe it means a little bit more to me because it was in our neck of the woods, but he was flipping out in a liquor store about he was being kicked out because he wouldn't wear a mask. And then he sort of turns on a heel and he leaves. If you look really, really closely at the back of his pants, he clearly stuck a 2.6 in his shorts. And I think I'm pretty fucking sure he went in, jammed it in there, and then made a scene to get out. Like, I don't know if we were the only ones who noticed that, but Grant picked that up on the morning show that I'm on, and he's like, that guy's fucking shoplifting.
Yeah.
I remember that video, though.
Yeah, he was wearing like a orange shirt or something and like blue shorts. Looked like an Albertan, probably named Randy.
Randy.
I was watching an interview, and they were talking about your book. I've got something to say with Danko Jones. Danko Jones joins us on the podcast at Danko Jones on Twitter. Sorry, he's got a new album coming out pretty soon too. It's called Power Trio. When is that coming out, Danko? Can you tell us?
August 27. So it's a long lead up time, but it's a pandemic year. So
when's the next single? Danko, when's the next single?
I believe it's coming out in April or May.
Okay.
Yeah.
The second single. Yeah.
I will keep an eye out for that one.
It's awesome.
Thank you.
And I listened to the first single, and I'm yet to listen to whatever else is on the album, but it's a Danko Jones album. Like, when you listen to it, what you get is just effort, vocals, guitar. It's fucking rock and roll.
Rock and roll up your ass.
Absolutely. And it doesn't slow down, which I love. And it reminded me, because I was watching some more of your stuff this morning, also in your book, a story about Lemmy. And as you're talking about pandemics, I had to think to myself, another one of the hardest rockers of all time. Do you think Lemmy, if he was alive, would be wearing a mask?
That's a great question.
That is a good question. That is a good question. You know what? I honestly would hope so. I would really, really hope so.
But
he would have had a hole in the middle of it for a smoke, though.
Smoking a
straw. Right.
And a
straw for Jack and Coke. Yeah, exactly. You can even get a Lemmy mask that makes you look like Lemmy.
Can you really?
No way.
Yeah. They sell it on Motorhead, the Motorhead website.
What was he like? What was he like? You told a great story about how you got wasted with him, and if anybody is, I used to drink, I used to love it, and used to love Jack and Coke, and if you know anything about Lemmy and Jack and Coke, it's Lemmy and Jack and Coke. He would barely show the Coke to it.
At the Rainbow every night.
Yeah. What was he like?
VLT.
Well, I mean, he was really nice to our band. He was, I got to hang out with him, but when it comes to those kinds of cats, it's partly because I'm so intimidated and enthralled to be in their presence that I don't say much. And also they are who they are and they just talk. So let me just talk. There was one time when I did get really drunk with him was during a day in the afternoon. And I walked by their dressing room. It was us and Motorhead playing in Brussels. Somewhere in Holland. And I walked by his dressing room and his roadie Tim summoned me in, and I walked in and I sat beside Lemmy. And Lemmy, a lot of people don't know this, but Lemmy, because he's Lemmy, he can't just be walking around at Burger King and you see Lemmy on the day of the show or anything. He stays in his dressing room until, the show. So he just did cartoons. He would make cartoons like Charles Schultz and Peanuts. He had books of cartoons that he had drawn himself. And so he took these cartoons out and he gave me a book for me to read. And I was opening the book and I was reading the cartoons. And then the punchline is what he writes at the bottom of the cartoon. But and as it went on, I kept drinking Jack and Coke. I was a little drunk and also very nervous. And I didn't want to not laugh. So I would just look at the cartoon. Nothing would really, I would not understand, not because I didn't understand. I was just so nervous. I just knew there was a punchline at the bottom and I would just laugh. I hadn't even read the line. And I would laugh and then he would laugh at me laughing. And then it just got more and more drunk. And then I had to go do sound check. So that was one of the times. And it wasn't because he wasn't funny. It was because he was so intimidating. Like, to me, he was so tall and he was tall. But it was just, it's like, and who he looks is so iconic that when he walks into a room, I think Dave Grohl said it in the Lemmy doc. He said he's like Captain Hook, and he is. He's like the real Captain Hook. And so,
where are those cartoons, Danko? Like somebody must
have it. I don't know who's got it. Whoever's in charge of it.
Were they actually good, or were you just humoring him, or were you just too nervous to read them?
I was too nervous for anything to register, but I knew I had to laugh. Like, and it's happened a couple of times. Like, there's been like times like that when you're in the presence of someone who's like beyond, a rock star, like they're iconic. And it's weird because you always make fun of these people, but when you're actually one of those people, you get it. Like, you just laugh when you're supposed to. I'm not going to name names, but there's someone and they were cracking jokes and you're just like, like, I don't even know if it's funny. Like, but if I'm not going to laugh, it's going to be super awkward. Yeah. And you just, it's weird. But I do remember though, laughing at a few. There were like, he's a pretty witty guy. So
were the cartoons really good? Like, I mean, forget the text. You didn't read it. Could he draw?
Right. Yes. Yeah, he could draw. It was pretty good. It was real. I mean, yeah, it was something that maybe he could have printed and people would have bought, like.
Did you ever see him without a Jack and Coke when you were with him?
No, the first time we hung out with Lemmy was when he came to see us play in London. And the publicist that we were working with in London also used to do Motorhead. And he goes, yeah, I invited Lemmy. And we were just looking at each other going, yeah, right. Okay, who else is coming? Margaret Thatcher? So sure enough, man, like
Margaret
Lemmy,
Thatcher.
sure enough, the zombie character of Margaret Thatcher walked in the back of the club. He was in the back of the room, and we met him. And then he took me and JC out on the town that night, and we ended up spending the evening with Lemmy. And so he brought us.
Remember where you went?
Yeah, we went to this strip joint called Stringfellows, which is, I guess, fairly famous. I don't know. Everyone knew him.
I like how you're doing that. Some strip joint called, I don't remember. I don't frequent those places.
You got to have a membership to get in, and we got in because
I think the guy's name was Tim, last name Johnson, phone number 416-995. I can't remember.
So we were at the bar, and Lemmy turns to me and he goes, "What are you drinking?" And I don't drink, man. Like I really don't. So I'm a lightweight. I don't really drink. And all I remember is I used to go out with a girl who always ordered me rum and Coke. So that was the only drink I could drink. So I just said rum and Coke. And Lemmy just keeps looking at me. And I think, oh, he hasn't heard me. So I go, rum and Coke, you know? And so he keeps looking at me with the same look. And then JC whispered in my ear, he goes, say Jack and Coke. And I go, all right, Jack and Coke. And then Lemmy nods, he turns around and he orders a drink at the bar. And so that was, that I learned my lesson there. But he was really, really nice. And that night, that was in 2003. And that night, man, he was hilarious. He was like, we hung out with him. We were just literally just.
Could you believe it? Like as a guy, like a guy who grew up loving rock and roll, one goal in life, I want to be a rock guy. You probably fucking loved Motorhead like everybody else did. The Ace of Spades. And then there you are, a couple of years after you started to kind of gain some momentum, and you're hanging out with your hero. I think about that when I see rookies on the court with like LeBron James. I'm like, that's got to be fucking surreal.
Yeah, it was totally surreal. I mean, it was, and he was so nice. I mean, but he was like talking to us like we were his peers, and that is incredible. Like that was incredible to me. And we were trying not to fanboy, try to be cool about it. But there's only a few things. I think he made a mention about Hawkwind because we mentioned we were from Toronto, and he said something about. I think he was in jail when he was in Hawkwind in Toronto on tour with Hawkwind. He made some mention about it. And then he said something to us that I'll always remember. He's like, oh, you know, talking about people. It's like, oh, you know, it's when it's your birthday and some people will come up to you and they'll bring you a cake and it's a carrot cake. And I hate carrots. You know, there's just moments like that.
Lemmy didn't know that you can't really taste the carrots, huh?
I can on some of the carrot cakes I've eaten.
You know what's funny about Lemmy? Not funny. It's kind of tragic, actually. But he had a blood. Did you know this, Dean? He had a blood disorder. So towards the end of his life, he finally went to the doctor. He wasn't feeling very good, and he was diagnosed with a bunch of stuff which eventually killed him. My guess is if he hadn't gone to the doctor, he would have lived another 5 years.
Probably.
But the doctor said that he had probably had this blood disorder for a number of years, and that the alcohol intake may have saved his life. No fucking word of a lie. Yeah.
Wow.
True story. Yeah.
Yeah.
That might be the only case of alcohol saving someone's life in the history of medicine, actually. But I heard a great story about Lemmy.
I don't need you shitting all over alcoholism, okay?
Sorry. I know one of the stories about Lemmy that I love is when he passed out a few years prior to dying, right? And they said he was, it was a big thing. Lemmy passed out. He collapsed. He's in the hospital. And everybody's like, holy fuck, that doesn't happen. That guy's made of iron. And then, there's this worry that there was an issue with him, and it just turned out he was dehydrated. And there was an interview with him shortly after he got out of the hospital. And the interviewer said to him, Lemmy, will you be drinking more water? And he said, no, mate, I'll be putting more ice in my drinks.
Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta love him. He was the best. It was pretty.
He
pretty
was that
hard.
guy though, right? Like
Him and Mick, or sorry, Keith. Him and Keith are those guys to me. Those, like, if you're gonna do a Rushmore of rock stars that have abused themselves yet defied the laws of age and gravity and health, you'd put Mick and Lemmy side by side, 1 and 2, or 1A and 1B, right? Wouldn't you? I would.
Yes, yeah, and it'll never. The thing about it is, he was aware. I gotta be 100% on this. He was aware that he was Lemmy. You know what I mean? But that didn't stop him from being very nice to bands, and he would always give bands a shot. And he gave us a shot, and he treated us, him and the rest of the guys, Mickey and Phil, and the whole Motorhead crew. They treated us like we learned so much on tour with them. How to treat everybody and how to be, and it was amazing. And he was very welcoming. It was a lesson in rock school going on tour with Motorhead.
To a man, though, everybody I've ever heard talk about Lemmy has said the same thing, man. Just
Quality,
very giving. Yeah.
On the last, sorry.
No, go ahead. Say it.
I was going to say, on the last show of our tour with Motorhead in 09 or 08, the last show is always with hijinks and stuff. And sure enough, Motorhead played hijinks, but they would call me up, and I got to sing Killed by Death with Motorhead like almost 20 times. And on the last show, I sang Killed by Death with them. And Lemmy's assistant, he said, "All right, go out there." And he slapped a sign on my back that I didn't feel, and it was supposed to say cock, but he misspelled the word cock, and he wrote cook. So that's also Motorhead too, and the fun and hijinks of like being on tour. So that was great.
Everybody's like, "Look, Danko's the cook."
I'm a cook.
We're letting the cook sing tonight.
Yeah, way to go. The cook is doing a song at the end of the tour. That's great.
Yeah.
Did you did you sell Johnny Cash a Nirvana album?
I did.
Is that what I read?
Absolutely. 100%. Yes.
Okay.
Sold it.
First, you got to stop. Johnny Cash and Nirvana and Hank Jr. and James Taylor are my desert island artists. So, which is weird, right? I'm weird when it comes to music. What was he like? What happened? How did that whole thing come about?
Right. So I was working at the Eaton Center at the Music World, which is at the
this is in Toronto.
Bottom. Yeah, I was in Toronto, and the Highwaymen were in town. I knew that for some reason, even though I wasn't following them. I just, back in the day, you just look at the listings. I knew the Highwaymen were in town, and I was working the floor, and the store had just opened for the morning, so there's nobody in the store. And then I saw what looked like Johnny Cash and June Carter walk by the store. Now, usually, if I didn't know the Highwaymen were in town, I would have said, "Wow, that guy looks like Johnny Cash, man." But I knew that was Johnny Cash. So I ran out of the store, and my manager, Tom, at the time, thought I was running after a shoplifter. And I went up to him and June Carter, and I go, "Oh, I'm a big fan," to Johnny Cash. I didn't even go to June Carter.
Never heard that before.
Yeah, she I know. She looked at me like, like a mom would look at their kid, because I was dressed up like, this was in the 90s, right? So I was dressed up like I was going to go to a Mudhoney show or something. So I was like, "Oh, I'm a big fan. I got this album and Live at Folsom Prison and this album and this album." I had like 3 or 4 Johnny Cash albums. And he looked at me and looked at June Carter, and I know they were thinking like, "Wow, I got a new demographic boiling here," And so, and this was in front of Shoppers Drug Mart. So I chased him down to Shoppers Drug Mart. And he goes, "Well, do you work there?" And I go, "Yeah, I work in this record store." And he goes, "Well, I have to do this song with this band Nirvana." And so June Carter, she said, "Okay, I'll be here." And it was the Nature Company. I don't know if you guys remember that They're out of
Yeah,
business now.
it's like a weird kind of hippie bath bomb sort of cream place, right? Is that the Nature Company?
I think they sold like they sold telescopes and they sold I don't know, like weird umbrellas and beaver.
Crazy went out of business.
Yeah, right. So she was there, and Nature Company was opposite Music World. So I brought in Johnny Cash. When my manager, who thought I was going to bring this CD that was someone had stolen, and I have Johnny Cash walking behind me. The look on his face, I'll never forget. He was just like, "Holy shit!"
Funny thing is, you're a shy guy too, right? Like, so this is a pretty big deal, though, right? For you,
but it's
for you to do this.
I'm not a musician, and it's Johnny fucking Cash. It's the origins of country and rock and roll.
You suck it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also, I'm super bored. I'm super bored working the floor of like a retail record store. So anything will, pique my interest. And so he honestly told me he was about to go into the studio with Nirvana. Now, Kurt Cobain had already died. And I think this was a tribute album to Kurt. And so I wanted to get him, Bleach or In Utero, but that was inside the store. And at the time, Unplugged was on the top 30 sellers right at the front of the store. So I just grabbed it and I gave it to him, thinking, how long do I have with this guy? And he bought it right there. He bought it right off us.
Did he pay cash?
I cannot remember because I wasn't working cash. I was working the floor.
Oh, okay.
So,
okay.
That's
was he
a great story.
How tall was he?
Yeah.
Was he a little dude?
No, he was.
guy?
He had some height. He was taller than me. Yeah, taller than me.
All black.
And
Was he wearing all black, or was he wearing like a tracksuit?
White jacket.
See, I want to know that. For whatever reason, I want to know if Johnny Cash was wearing black when he was at the Eaton Center.
And so he signed we just ripped off pieces of paper, that we could find, and he signed it all. And then later on, we compared the autograph to some of the CDs that bore his autograph, his signature on it, and it was Johnny Cash.
Fucking crazy.
That's a crazy story. I love it.
Isn't that nuts?
Yeah.
Like to be able to talk to just as a happenstance, Johnny Cash. Like if you have you seen Cash, the show, Joaquin Phoenix, the movie?
Yes.
Have you seen that?
Yes.
That's when, and I knew who Johnny Cash was, and I surfacely liked his music. And after I watched Cash, I had a new respect, not just for him, but obviously June Carter as well, and what he went through. And that started me on my Johnny Cash thing, which is, I'm obsessive, right? Like when I listen to something or find something new that I really like, I gorge on it. And so it was my introduction, and everybody knew about the Folsom Prison Blues, the live album. But if you haven't listened to Johnny Cash's Folsom Prison Blues, if you haven't taken that entire album in with the context of what he did when he did it, going into this place of guys that, rapists, murderers, drug dealers, guys who were in there that shouldn't have been, he's in Folsom fucking prison, for crying out loud. Like, and everybody was like, "Are you nuts? What are you doing?" It's like, no, I want to do it. And A Boy Named Sue on that album might be my favorite song of all time.
Sort of interesting side note about that record. I don't know if a lot of people know this, but they were not allowed to clap or get out of their seats. So he was playing to a dead fucking audience. So after the fact, they had to add piped in like crowd noise and everything like that. Yeah.
Wow.
Crazy. Yeah.
Wow.
Crazy.
I didn't know that. I thought that was live.
I didn't know that either. Yeah.
No. The guards stood there with batons beside everybody, and they were all sitting in rows, and they had to sit there without making a noise. Yeah.
Wow.
That was the deal.
Fascinating. Isn't
Yeah.
that crazy?
Yeah.
That long ago. Speaking of that long ago, Danko has a new podcast, not new, it's a couple of years old, called The Regal Beagle. It's all about, we talked about it earlier. The Regal Beagle is all about Three's Company episodes. Were you always a big Three's Company guy? Are you a John Ritter guy? Are you a Mr. Furley or a Mr. Roper guy? Like, or was this just like a, hey, I want to do something that nobody's doing?
Oh, it was everything, all of the above, except the Roper. I'm a Furley guy.
Me too. Huge. Yeah, let's have a look. Easy to, like, just right there you can go, whoever the guy is. If you don't know Don Knotts or Norman Fell, you can say, oh, Don Knotts will be the funnier of the two, right? It's Don Knotts.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Furley's the man. And yeah, I haven't had the best of luck trying to get actual Three's Company cast members on. The only one I've ever had is Reverend Snow, who actually just passed away, I believe, a month or two ago. Chrissy's dad. I can't remember his name right now. I should have remembered his name. But I've gotten a response from Priscilla Barnes. She's been interested in being on it. And Richard Klein said he will check it out. That's what he said.
That's Richard Klein, Larry. You're talking about Larry. And then we've got a
Larry.
couple of Christies. And then we got Joyce DeWitt over here.
Yeah.
If you're not familiar with that show, I would be fascinated because I was listening to the podcast where you said you sent Mr. Klein an interview request and he said he was going to listen to the show. And that was 3 years ago. So his get back to you game is terrible.
Yeah, I haven't actually, because I hit Priscilla Barnes up a couple of times about being on the show, and she's like, I'm really busy this month and blah, blah, blah. At least she replies. But I gave up after the second request. Maybe I should hit her up again, and maybe I should hit up Richard Klein again. But so far, that's who I've gotten. I mean,
do you like doing it?
Yeah. I stopped doing it during the pandemic. A friend of mine who listens to the podcast said, "Have me on. Like you got to restart this thing. Like kind of just trying to get me out of my I don't know, slump of just sitting at home waiting for the pandemic to be over."
Mm-hmm.
But I did for a few weeks, and then I don't know. I just stopped. It's been, but now, like I was saying before, the vaccines roll out. I'll start bringing it back again soon enough. I love Three's Company.
Yeah, more than anybody, because it's the only Three's Company podcast I've ever seen in my life. And I say that.
I think it is the only Three's. We were doing not this last record, but the record before was called A Rock Supreme, and it was done by Garth Richardson. Produced it. Who produced Rage Against the Machine? Garth, yeah. Garth is the best. We had such a great time with him. And on the first day of pre-production, he took us out for breakfast before we start working on the record. And he says, like, yeah, tell me about yourself. So, telling him about, and then I think I led with, I do a Three's Company podcast. And then he just stopped, like mid sip of his coffee, and he's like, "Whoa, what?" He's like, "What did you say?" And I think that was it. That really kind of broke the ice, sort of, and we got along splendidly. Just because
what does JC think of the Three's Company fucking podcast?
I think he just was. I think it's a quiet eye roll. I believe.
That's fantastic.
All kinds of stuff like that. Yeah, like so.
You should. You know what? Because it made me think. Like when I realized you had one, when we were texting back and forth, I went and listened to it, and I'm like, this is the niche of the niche, right? Yeah. And that's like people want very specific shows or podcasts right now about very specific things that remind them of a better time. Right. And in detail, like, 10 years ago, if someone said, I'm going to do a whole show on the radio about Three's Company episodes, I'd be like, oh, that'll be like 2 a.m. No one will listen to it. Just filler. But like it's destination listening, because when you go back and listen to it, as I did today, you get reminded of when you used to see Jack coming in. You used to see Larry come in and try and derail John Ritter all the time. Then you start thinking about, oh my God, that was during a time, that show, Three's Company, was during a time they had a gay guy on the show, during a time when it was like super taboo to do it. But they also had Norman Fell, who, and a lot of, what would be deemed now, context of the time, what would be homophobic. Like they really did some content that nobody did back then. It was brand new. Like I remember watching it going, whoa, why is John Ritter gay in this, or pretend gay? Like, can you explain that? Right?
Yeah. I mean, if you go like the Dave Hill one, if you go back on the podcast, I started it, and I still do, with my cousin, who's he just turned 30. So we started doing it when he was in his 20s, and he's never watched the show. And I love the show, and I force him to watch it and then bring him on the podcast to talk about it. And he hates the podcast. He hates the show. And so we had to go through it chronologically. He hates the Ropers. He hated the early years, but then he really thinks Priscilla Barnes Terry is attractive, and he thinks Mr. Furley is funny. So he's starting to come around to it. But that was the big premise of the show, is like my cousin hates it, I love it, and I'm forcing him to watch it.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Very good.
Another thing is he actually works in television, and the show, and I can't mention the show or else we would have a long time ago, but the show he works on, they actually had Suzanne Summers as a guest, and we were texting back and forth because I'm like, get her on. Like, I'll drive down and we'll do a podcast. Get her, like, talk to her. You know,
Yeah.
he just couldn't. He was just part of the crew, so he couldn't come up to her, but that was the closest we got to like Suzanne Summers. And because he does the podcast with me, he knows who Suzanne Summers is, and he knows Chrissy now. Or whereas she would have just been another guest. So he was texting me. He's like, yeah, Suzanne Summers is coming in today. I'm like, what? Like, I got to be down there. You got to get me in. so there's that, you know.
But those are, you know, goes back to those stories we were telling when you were hanging out with Lemmy and you met Johnny Cash and stuff. It's like everything's very relative, right? You know, your heroes are relative, your shows are relative, and that's kind of the cool world in podcasting, right, or live casting or streaming, is that you can unabashedly say, I'm a massive Three's Company fan.
Yeah.
And everybody will go, what's that? And you go, you know, the show. And they're like, ringing a bell. And then you start talking about it. And you're like,
song. I mean, I don't care how old you are. You'll know the song.
Come on, knock
My
on
kids
our
know the
door.
song. Yeah.
Take a step that is true.
My kids are 21 and 23, and I'll play the song for them. They'll name the show. Boom. Yeah.
Yeah. Three's Company.
Yeah.
But that's the beautiful part about the time that we live in, is that you can literally go back and go, I'm going to talk about this, and you become the authority on it. Like, to me, you're the Three's Company authority.
Well, thank you. I mean, that's
You're
the
welcome.
reason why I do it. I really want that distinction. There's only two things I can talk about and be confident that I'm an expert on, and that's Three's Company and Kiss. That's it.
Huge Kiss guy. Have you met Gene Simmons?
I have. Yeah.
I've interviewed him several times, and every time he made a point of making someone in that conversation feel like a complete piece of garbage, like a complete piece of garbage. And so jury's out. Like, I love the stories. I didn't necessarily, he was good to me, but some people that I was with, he wasn't necessarily great to. You know, you'd be in a conversation with him. And I remember one time we were talking to him, and he was going to come down and be the flag bearer for the Indy race here in Toronto. And one of the persons I was working with at the time asked him a couple of questions, and there's this long pause, and he goes, well, if you had read the source material that was sent to you by my PR person, you wouldn't ask that stupid question. And I'm like, been great to have you on, Gene. Really appreciate it. We'll see you down at the Indy.
Yeah. That's the best way to handle them. Yeah. I've heard very similar stories about him, and that's why I'm Team Paul. I'm always Team Paul.
I find it fascinating. Any serious musician, you're a very, very, very fucking good musician. Your band's terrific.
Oh, thank
I find
you.
it fascinating that so many good musicians like a band that really weren't great musicians.
Yes. Like, part of being a Kiss fan is making fun of Kiss, I think. That's the best part. So yeah, like I can't disagree with you. I mean, but that's the best part about them, is they've actually managed to be, I think I'm mediocre, and I think they're mediocre, and that's why I like them so much, and they're able to make something great out of their mediocre talent. Same with me, I think, like, I agree. Like, they're not the best guitar players or singers or anything, but somehow they made something happen, and that's inspiring to someone who's also mediocre like myself. And so that's why I love them
Should
so
be
much.
really inspiring to me too. Then I don't know why I haven't been listening to the band. I'm incredibly mediocre.
Get the drums out again, Dean.
Well, that's just it. It's like Eric Carr, the second drummer. He's actually an incredible drummer. So that, yeah,
He ruined the band.
Are you a big Kiss guy too, Luck? Are you a big Kiss guy?
No, I never got that escaped me. I think I had once. A Kiss lunchbox when I was a kid. So that's the extent of it. I may have gotten a Kiss record when I was like 8 or 9 from my grandmother for Christmas or something. But yeah,
a Kiss
I moved
record.
On.
Like,
sorry,
Kiss record?
Dank.
Yeah, I had never owned one. I never had one Kiss record.
Yeah,
I didn't get it. I never got it. Right, like I never understood it. I didn't like Animalize. I remember I had my buddy left Animalize the tape. Remember we used to have tapes. Remember those things?
Cassettes were big for me.
Left his Animalize cassette in my car, and I'm like, he loves Kiss. I should listen to Kiss and give Kiss a chance. And I was about 2 minutes into the song where you gently press the forward button, like not all the way, but you gently press it until you get to the blank spot in the tape. And you're like, okay, stop. I want to hear the next song. Same thing, minute or two in. I'm like, it's all right. Go to the next song. So I never really understood it. The only thing I knew about Kiss is that Gene Simmons liked the ladies. That was pretty much it. And then my first experience going to a Kiss show was at Northlands Coliseum in Edmonton, the old Northlands Coliseum. And the smell of vomit, coming from the area I was in, and how many people, it was like Halloween. I went with my Mandarin collared shirt because I was like 20 years old and a pair of shorts, and they looked pretty good. And I showed up and I'm like, it was this fucking biker rally going on in a Kiss show.
Right.
Yeah.
That'll be a perfect storm to not like Kiss.
Yeah.
I know, and I want to, right? Because like cool people like Kiss. Yeah, musicians.
Animalize is not the best entry point.
No, Lick It Up.
Oh, that's one of my favorites.
Lick It Up. Yeah, you like Lick It Up?
Oh, it's a great album.
Okay,
but a great entry point would be Creatures of the Night. That's the best entry point, I think.
I promise you, I'm going to start listening to Kiss. I'm going to give it a go. Promise.
You don't have to. Nah. You can do without.
Yeah. Okay. Then I won't. Thanks.
He heard your wardrobe. He heard your wardrobe, and he's thinking, "Do we need this guy in the Kiss army?" No.
Danko Jones, listen, we really appreciate you being here. The new album is called Power Trio, and you can go to dankojones.com for more information. We can follow Danko on Twitter as well. You're a great follow on Twitter at Danko Jones on Twitter.
Thank you.
Yeah, and the new song is called I Want Out. And if you identify with anything we talked about earlier in the podcast about where you are mentally and the time that we live in, it is excellent. Not only is it just one of those in-your-face rock tunes that Danko Jones is known for, but it's cool in our time. It really spoke to me today, and I thought it was fucking really, really cool. He's got a couple of books out as well, so I encourage you to go to Amazon or Indigo. I've got something to say. Danko Jones, 10 Years of Rock and Roll Ramblings. That is available in stores, and I think it includes a bunch of these stories that we talked about today too. So if you enjoyed that, please go and look for the stuff that Danko does, and specifically the Regal Beagle podcast. I'm looking forward to getting into episode 2 of the last season. So thank you.
Yeah, we're going in chronological order. We're at season 6. We got 2 more seasons to go, and then it's the Ropers and Three's a Crowd.
It's like planning it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So there's actually 10 seasons of Three's Company shows.
Yeah, I know. And they're in season 6 already.
Fantastic.
Yeah. He loves it. Thanks, Danko. Really appreciate you being here, brother.
That was fun, Danko. Thank you, man.
Oh, thank you, Dean. Thank you, Locke. Thank you, guys. Thanks so much, man. It was a lot of fun.
Anytime. We'll
and
talk
thanks,
to you
Darren.
soon.
I mean, Darren had to jet, but thanks, Darren, wherever you are. And we're jamming together very soon.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. We'll put that out when we see it.
That's a cool sort of accident today, right? That you guys are on a fucking song together. That's awesome. Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Appreciate you, brother. Stay away from grocery stores, and we'll talk to you soon.
Oh, you better believe I will.
Okay. He's so serious. Thanks, brother. We'll talk to you. Danko Jones, ladies and gentlemen. Danko Jones. What a good guy.
Yeah, he's a great guy. He's one of those, and I wasn't kidding. I saw him at a small little blues club in Prince George, BC in 1999. They were a really new band at the time and raw as hell. And I remember I was outside having a smoke or something, and I heard that start, and I walked in, and I was just like, holy shit, what's this? And I made contact with him after that set. It was like an afternoon show too. It was in the middle of the day. And he came out like honestly, people who've seen Danko Jones know what I'm talking about. It wouldn't matter what time of the day it is, where he was. He was in front of 30 people in Prince George, BC, and he was performing like there was 100,000 people in front of him. And that's his show. It does not matter where he is. He's going to put on a show, and they just rock like nobody's business. And like I said, I've sort of been in touch with him ever since, and I've had him on. I probably interviewed Danko Jones 30 times on the radio.
Really?
But this was cool.
So you guys are really close.
Well, as close as you get with somebody who, a radio guy and a musician, touring musician. Yeah. And he disappeared. Like when I say he hasn't stopped for 25 years, I wasn't kidding. Like that band goes hard because they are relatively unknown in Canada,
which is fucking unbelievable because they're massive in Scandinavia,
makes no sense
Australia, Germany, France. Like people fucking love them. And Canada's like, we don't get it.
He's a festival band, eh?
Yeah.
Like in the summer.
Dude, I was reading about the start of their career. They performed for a few years and didn't want to do a record. They just wanted to do live shows. That's all they wanted to do. That's it. I'm like, that's not a recipe for success. But they were forced to put out live albums because they were that good. And then all of a sudden, obviously, it is what it is today.
One of the best songs I've like my favorite Danko Jones tune is a tune that I don't think was even on a record. I believe he's released. You talked about that double album. I think that's got some rarities on it. And I think there's a version of Mountain on it. But there's a song that they do where Danko just comes out and just starts talking about why he is doing what he is doing and paying homage to all the greats of rock and roll. And then it's like a 7-minute balls to the wall rock and roll song. I alluded to the age of his neck in the podcast.
Yep.
That's because he actually did damage to his neck from that. Yeah. And he fucked his neck up. He can't do that anymore.
Because he rocks so fucking hard.
Yeah. He fucked his neck so bad that he had to stop doing the headbang thing when he was on tour. Yeah. So when he goes to Europe, when they go to Europe, man, he'll do a summer festival and he'll be on at like 7, 8 o'clock at night, third or fourth act on in front of 125,000 people. That's how big they are over there.
Massive.
And if you run into somebody that knows what bounce is, the song.
Yep.
In Canada. Yeah. You that's as far as it goes, right?
You know what struck me about him? That strikes me about really good people. You could tell he's a really good person.
He's a really good guy.
What strikes me about those guys is the difference between the stage version of themselves and the conversation or public version of themselves, right?
Yeah.
If you've seen Danko Jones, and I've seen Danko twice, once at the Government, which was called the Cool House, and I think I saw them at Lee's Palace years ago.
Lee's Palace. I actually, you and I might have been at that show together because
the Foo Fighters and Dank.
Yeah,
were they at the Foo Fighters show?
I think we should have got. I can't remember, but I saw him at Lee's Palace too.
But when you see him on stage, he's insane. Like he looks like he's got an anger management issue.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't
looks
stop.
Bigger than life.
He's loud. He's fucking talented, and he's aggressive. What I saw there was this kind, gentle, thoughtful man who's like all of us struggled with the pandemic and kind of wanted to talk about it, right? But when you see him on stage, you're like, holy fuck, that's not that guy. That's not the same cat. But it is.
We got a lot out of him too. Honestly, Dean, he's quite reserved, to be honest. That's why I really wanted to have Darren on too, because I knew another musician might drag some stories out of him a bit, right? Instead of two just radio guys. But yeah, we got a really cool version of Danko today, like a very cool version of him.
Mm-hmm.
And again, unbelievably talented, multi-talented. Yeah.
Interesting. A lot like you.
I don't know about that.
The Swiss Army knife of talent. Morning show in the morning, podcast in the afternoon. Little Danko Jones.
This is fun for me, man. I love doing this with you. This is I'm really enjoying this. Who are we interviewing tomorrow?
Tomorrow we've got Dwayne Steinell, Dwayne from Buffalo. Buffalo is going for their 19th straight loss in a row tonight, which will be fucking huge. Like, that city wants this. The city of Buffalo needs this loss because it doesn't matter if they win. It just means they've won one in a row. But to lose 19 in a row and to tie the NHL record, which is 100 years old,
That's awesome.
When guys were coming back from the war, they got like 6 guys. Let's just play. They lose like 20 in a row. That's what this is. Like, this is Ottawa Senators expansion season futility. And like, they were supposed to be really good this year. And so talking to Dwayne, because he's a super fan, he literally lost his mind the other day and put out like a 4-minute tweet of him just laughing like the Joker. Like, he was literally kind of losing his marbles with this whole thing. But now, as much as he wants him to win, everybody in the city of Buffalo wants the fucking Sabres to lose their 19th in a row tonight. I can't wait to talk to him.
Dwayne, don't let me forget to bring this up, because we had Taylor Hall in Edmonton for a couple of years, right? And Taylor Hall is kind of, from all accounts, like, I never met him, but he was just a dick, like a raging cock. And he was being kicked out of bars, hitting on like women. And
you better listen, when you say stuff like this, I hope you've got hard proof.
Oh, fuck no. I never back anything up, Dean. It's all hearsay.
Points for honesty. Sorry, go ahead.
You know that. How long have you known me?
Oh, fuck no. You better back this up. I can't. Sorry. Anyway, here's the rest of the story.
So anyway, here's more hearsay. Yeah. Apparently, he is a brony. Do you know what a brony is? So he
loves My Little Pony.
He loves My Little Pony, and when he has a lot of bronies, when he has girls over to the house,
this isn't true.
He would make them. Yes, it's true.
No, it is not
I
true.
believe it.
You believe it. You can say you believe it, but you can't say it's true, because we're all going to get in trouble. You won't, but I will.
I believe it. I believe it.
At Lachlan Cross on Twitter.
This is true. He brings girls into his hotel
room. It's not true. You can't say that it's true.
Listen, before we get it on, I just need you to put on this costume and watch this cartoon with me.
That's not true.
He's a brony.
It's not.
He's a card
You
carrying
gotta have
member.
proof. He might be a Leaf soon, so I hope he is. But you can't say he is if he's not, and you don't know.
I'm telling Dwayne that Taylor Hall's a fucking brony, because they're not going to be able to move him.
He's going to love it. Ryan Hank from the PP1 podcast will be on with us too. He's a Vancouver Canucks podcaster.
Okay.
And the host of our PP1 Vancouver Canucks podcast. So he's gonna talk with us about that. He'll be specifically interested in whether or not Taylor Hall's a brony.
By the way,
I have a feeling he's coming to Toronto too at the trade deadline. I have a feeling.
You? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's a mistake. He's a horrible teammate. He'll suck the life out of that team. You guys,
he's buddies with Mitch Marner. He's buddies with Mitch Marner and Austin Matthews. Go ahead. What?
I bet you Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner know that he's a brony. This is going to be a major segment of the podcast tomorrow, whether or not Taylor Hall's a brony.
Yeah, let's do it. That's tomorrow on the podcast with Lachlan Cross, Dean Blundell, Dwayne Steinell, and James DeFiore if he makes it. That'll be awkward for him too. He hasn't watched a hockey game in 2 years. He'll just insult the Portuguese.
He doesn't look like he doesn't watch hockey at all. What'd you do today? I ate a handful of mushrooms and wandered around the woods.
He goes texting back and forth with James today. He's so funny. But he's also like so aggressive.
Yeah.
Right? Send me a text. He's like, take down that tweet. Well, it wasn't like that. It wasn't that direct. He's like, take down that tweet about Randy Hillier. And I'm like, I don't think so.
Like I said, he needs to work on being comfortable with conflict. He's just not.
Well, we'll talk about it in the next podcast. That's tomorrow.
That's
right here at teamblundell.com.
Brony and psychoanalysis of our co-host, James.
Have a great day, everybody. Thanks a lot. Really appreciate you being here.
Take care, man.
All right, buddy. That's Lachlan Cross, 95.7 Cruise FM in Edmonton. Thanks for listening to the podcast brought to you by our friends at Blue Microphones, at Blue Microphones on Twitter. BlueMic.com. Go and check out their full offering. USB mics, XLR mics, XLR, something. They have everything, including these MoFi headphones. They're Grammy Award winning, if you don't know, and they're fucking fantastic. Part of the Blue Crew, the DeanBlundell.com, official microphone of DeanBlundell.com. That would be the Blue Microphones. Ed's Fine Imports. He's got Gitch. You can have it. Luxury underwear that comes with a pouch in the front for your fellas. Super comfortable, no piling, really stretchable, lightweight as well. Great waistband. If you're on the go and you just got no time to go buy Gitch, make sure you buy Ed's Gitch, edsfineimports.com. Promo code GITCH3. He'll send you 4 for the price of 3, so it's a good deal. Gitch from edsfineimports.com. Domination. Our friend Adam invented this AI where you can actually produce promos for the shows that you're doing and podcasts you're doing in like minutes. 70 different promos if you want. Minutes. Doesn't take hours for one. Minutes for 70, 50, 60, 80. Doesn't matter. Try it for free. DMNTN.com, domination.com. Try it. Awesome. Helps you. Easier. Saves time. That's what it's all about, domination.com. And don't forget our friends over at Black Rose Organics, better medicine at a better price. Check out our last podcast with Nurse Jessica Fernyhough, Big Chris, and Paul Sadu from Black Rose Organics at YouTube. Our YouTube page is the Dean Blundell Show YouTube page where you can get everything we do. So go and check that out as well. Thanks to our friends at Black Rose. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for watching and listening. Don't forget to sign up for our newsletter. Until then, we'll see you on the other